Yo, people, lateness is greatness, and we are taking that to the extremes today. Alex is in big trouble. Do you know what I mean? What's going on, Alexander? Huh?
You know what? I was always told it was fashionably cool to be late. So there you go. It was on purpose.
It's true. And I've made that. I kind of saved you in a way because the channel, the intro is made for this. We have to be late, even by a couple minutes. I do that. But now, because of this, I have to make you call me Mr. Matisse the whole episode. We did it on the byline. I was punished. And it has to go both ways, I'm afraid. You're in my land now. Do you know what I'm saying?
Only if you promise to tell all of your viewers who Kyle Lamptey is.
So the last byline episode, before we get into the preview, people, I accidentally said Kyle Lamptey instead of Tariq Lamptey. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's in the bio. It's not gonna be forgotten about. It's on the timeline now. I was thinking of Carl Walker. I got confused very quickly, man.
So, yeah, but what your viewers need to understand is for episodes and episodes and episodes, you kept saying Lamptey. You put in an extra E. So that was really bugging me. And then all of a sudden, the other night, you perfected Lamptey. And you slapped on a Kyle in front of it. So there you go.
My camera's done upside down 360. It was just how mad the name was. But anyway, to the live chat, apologies. I know you guys been waiting, but you already know how it goes around here. I can see some familiar faces. I got Jake in here. Hello to you, Ellis. Tiz, we got David. I'm sure iTest Merchants in here as well, and a few others. So yeah, man, Omar. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be doing a Burnley preview. Before we get into it, Alex, what's the first thing you think of when you think of Burnley Football Club? Just off the top of your head.
It's really two things. So it's Ugly Football or Sean Dyche. These days, it's Sean Dyche.
Yeah,
I really enjoy listening to him speak, only really for his voice. Matisse, you actually know private reasons why. But no, I would say Ugly Football. Ugly Football.
Random phone call from someone I don't even know. Oh, it's Vodafone. Fantastic. Interrupting my stream. You know these phone companies, they just feel like they can just ring you whenever they want.
And it's your mobile, right? It's your cell?
Yeah. So I'm using my mobile because my laptop camera is not as good, and they just out of the blue just want to ring me. I'm going to have words with Vodafone very soon, people. But back onto the preview. I mean, I'm excited for this game. I'm not gonna lie to you, Alex. I don't know how you're feeling, but I have not been this excited for a match in a while now, because there just seems to be this uplifting beat around the club. You got size 2 footballs on the training pitch. You've got, new pictures to grovel over. How are you feeling going into the game against Burnley FC?
Now, I won't lie. So originally, and it wasn't because I was so heartbroken over Frank, but originally I was trying to stay reserved as my dog starts chewing a bone in the background. Come on now. Anyway, I was trying to stay reserved because I saw so many things on Twitter like, this player's happy again, this player's back. And I thought to myself, all right, that's a little aggressive, because I saw all these tweets that Kovacic is back. And then I wondered, who was the manager for Kovacic's player of the season? So I was getting a little bit like, all right, let's slow down here, ladies and gentlemen. But honestly, I started to buy in and get really excited for this upcoming game when I just dug a little deeper on Tuchel, the man manager, what he's like as a person. I've got some good insight now into kind of his conversations with players, how they go, what he likes, the intensity he likes in a player. Because I knew ahead of time, Matisse, you know this, I knew ahead of time Tuchel was a really good tactician. But that wasn't really enough, I'll admit, for me to be super pro hiring Tuchel. But I would say, since all of his interviews, which I need to say, you do have to take with a grain of salt, because everyone's first few interviews with the club, they're going to be pretty happy. They're going to say all the right things. Even Sarri did that, and he wasn't much of a PR guy, but Tuchel definitely is more of. So lately, the last few days, in kind of just obviously seeing the team, like you kind of mentioned, have more spirit, have more energy, but also just seeing a bit more of Tuchel with this group, I am getting a lot more excited. And honestly, I'm sure we might talk about it. I'm sure many people are talking about it. We know Tuchel will change up formations and things, but I started thinking back to the days I was watching Borussia Dortmund for a while. I mean, I used to love Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang before he went to Arsenal, so I watched a crap load of Dortmund there. I liked that one season of Ousmane Dembele. Of course, being American, I was interested in Pulisic, so I was always watching. I felt like Tuchel's Dortmund, and he did play that 3-4-3 that he played the other night, where Callum was I know we called it a wing back, but really more of a right mid. And then I just started looking the last couple of days at some of the players Tuchel would put in that 3-4-3 in Dortmund. And it was a very attacking lineup. It was a very fun team. And I'm not saying we're going to get a 3-4-3 every game. I'm not even saying I think we should do a 3-4-3 every game. But we know Burnley are going to play ugly. We know we're going to possess the ball. It could be frustrating, but still, I kind of expect another game where there's a lot of possession. We probably have an extra attacker out there like the other night. And I definitely, Matisse, most importantly, I'm excited for, well, if they looked okay, not bad and a little bit different with less than 24 hours with Tuchel, well, what can they do now with 2.5 days? So, no, I'm really excited now. I'm genuinely excited. I didn't want to buy into everyone's excitement. I didn't want to just piggyback off of it. But now I have my own natural, genuine, authentic excitement.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we're very much in the honeymoon period. I've been putting it into my subscribers' heads for the last week. You know, we are in the honeymoon period. We've been swept off our feet. We're going out on dates. We're getting roses. We're getting all that good stuff. And by the way, lap it up, enjoy it, because there will be tough times ahead. There will be fights. There will be domestics, and we may have to call the police again. But until we get to that point, enjoy. But
that wasn't a personal life story, right?
Yeah, go for it.
No, I've been saying you having to call the police isn't a personal life story, right?
No.
Okay.
I sound like I just said go for it in terms of call the police. No. But in terms of the way that it ended, I guess, with Lampard, it basically was like them calling the police and just dashing him out. But I want to go on to what you said as well about that 3-4-3 before I address these super chats. Is that the Pulisic at right mid at Dortmund? You know, we saw Hudson-Odoi in a similar position, and I thought to myself, this is why, for me, if we do play the formation, I don't see Reece as much in that right wing back position as a lot of people maybe online have been alluding to. I see Reece as that, and we're going to talk about the different formations that could be in this game as well, but I see Reece as that right-sided centre-back, very similar to where Aspie played under Conte, although it's going to be a more attacking system. Someone that can step into midfield, but has the best of both worlds because he can still cross from those positions as well. We've seen the way that he crosses with he really, like a knife's blade, cuts it with the inside of his right boot, and really with no real, there's no real pace in terms of him running onto the cross. It's just a standing still position. He can stand there and just whip the ball in. He's really good. Variety of ways that he can cross, and obviously we know he's comfortable in the midfield in terms of his awareness and his possession. So I see him in that role where he can move into midfield and make it a 2-3, well, a 2-3 and then a 5 or whatever you want to call it, but it progresses if the shape changes as the game goes on, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that from that spot, especially like you've been saying, when we have possession, we're in the attacking half, he can obviously come a bit more forward at an angle, and he's not playing in a classic center back spot. So the cross is still there. It's totally still there. It reminds me of when Azpilicueta would cross and assist Morata. Correct me if I'm wrong, that wasn't always from a pure right back spot. I think he did that sometimes as a right center back. I can't remember these days, but I know that position, like you said, can definitely still get into good crossing areas. The only thing where we're going to see a lot less of Reece doing something if he plays the right center back spot is hitting the byline. Obviously, hitting the byline, getting that far down the pitch and putting in, let's be real, some tremendous balls, whether they're on the ground, they're fizzed across net, they're more looped in the air. He had one last season to Tammy where he's falling out of bounds and he curls it in, and Tammy actually got one of his few headers there. So that's probably the aspect you'll miss with Reece if you play him at right center back. And obviously, I don't want to go back on everything we ever said positively under Lampard, and I hope fans don't either, because I'm still under the belief that, let's say Lampard had coached better, the results were a bit better, and Lampard was still here, I would still be someone who's saying, oh man, I can't wait to see what Ziyech and Reece can do a bit more together as a right back and a right winger. So that's the beauty of Reece James, really. My point is that obviously if you put him at right center back, there's allures to that. He's physical enough to play that position, and his height doesn't matter as much, or his lack thereof, in a 3 center back system like you've mentioned with Aspie, and he can still cross. So definitely there's an allure him playing right center back. He's played it before at academy level. Right back, we know the allure. And if he ever does play more of the right mid in a 3-4-3, and maybe then the left mid is more of a winger type like Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi, well, then he can hit the byline a lot, obviously. So, yeah, I like Reece in every position imaginable. I think if you're a good debater, you can probably argue against a position and for a position for him. But put him in midfield, put him at right center back, put him at right back, put him at right mid/right wing back. I mean, back in the day, he was a winger, he was an attacker, and he scored crap load of goals. So put him anywhere, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. This super chat here from Roy, I'm going to get straight to it because it's a wild one. I'm not going to lie. I don't agree with it. 1 second, let me just pull it back up. It was Sell Kai and Buy Highland, two completely different players, by the way, to start with. So not even a like-for-like replacement, in my opinion. He was a disaster. Leverkusen, Kondas. I think this is very reactionary, bro. And before I let Alex tackle it, I couldn't disagree more. Again, no skills, no physicality, no pace. This is a player that, again, he is still acclimatizing heavily. Out of all of the new signings, he's the one that a lot of people said at the start is probably the one with the highest potential, but also the one that is going to take probably the longest to acclimatize. He's 21 years old. In the first time that he's moved abroad, the first time that he's in a new league, he has to get used to, I agree, the tempo, the change of the speed potentially of the game, the way that we go against low blocks and all these things. But fundamentally, he's probably, out of all of the new attacking signings, for me, the one that has the most potential and the one that has the most variety in terms of the foundation of talents that he has. We talk about heading the ball. We talk about someone that has an eye for a pass. We saw it at Leverkusen. We haven't seen it as much at Chelsea, but definitely can put the ball through the eye of a needle and definitely help Ziyech with that. I think the fan base is very much overloaded on Ziyech passing, but haven't brought up Kai Havertz because of the loss of form, but he can definitely pass the ball. He's got skills. You make no mistake. So that's definitely wrong in my opinion. Physicality, I understand where you're coming from. But he's 21. We saw physicality from all of these young boys. Unless you're a beast like Reece James, who is just alien type, like in terms of his physicality, you have to grow into your body. It takes a while. He's still growing. And for me, I just think modern day, in terms of a midfielder, he's got so much potential. So I couldn't disagree with you more. What do you make of that, Alex?
Can you repeat those three things again? No pace, no physicality, and what was the third?
No skills.
Oh, my heavens. Wow. Wow. So,
I've never disagreed with a super chat so much.
Really brilliantly, but let me just go through those three things. No pace. I mean, it's factually incorrect. It is factually incorrect. He's actually one of the quicker players out there. If you want to look at all the nerdy stats like top speed, Kai Havertz, you'll find, especially back in the Leverkusen days, usually being way up there. I think people say that because he's really tall. So a lot of tall players might not be the quickest. And also, we've talked about this so much, you and I. His body language is very malaised, you could say. It's very Reece James-like, to be perfectly honest, where they give off a sluggish, lazy vibe, but they're not at all. It's just kind of their body language. And I'm sure when they're doing well, no one's talking about it, yet their body language is exactly the same. So no pace. I mean, it's factually incorrect. No skills or whatever that part was. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So this shows me that many people didn't really watch him at Leverkusen. They couldn't even be bothered to watch YouTube highlights. I mean, I totally swear against YouTube highlights. I don't think that's how you should study a player. I think you should at least go for compilations, which still could be on YouTube, of the good, the bad, the ugly, and intricate things. But no matter what you watched of Kai, if you bothered to watch anything of Kai from his days in Germany, there are plenty of skills. I mean, way past nutmegs. He was the nutmeg king over there, but he's got skills. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And no physicality. I mean, I know he's skinny, and I'm sure something that strength and conditioning coaches will do with him is they want to make him more muscular and obviously just strengthen his core at least a little bit. I don't ever expect him to look like Adama Traore or half of that, but no physicality. I mean, didn't he just score a header 2 games ago and he got absolutely walloped on that header? Looked like the wind was almost knocked out of him. Like, he's there to mix it up. He totally is. And there isn't just one coach in the world who thinks about putting him at striker or the false 9. I think many coaches and managers would think about that. And you have to have some physicality to you to be able to do that. And I think they're once again probably going off of just how he looks. Like, he's more physical, in my opinion, than Alvaro Morata. And Morata was obviously a bit wider, but the minute you touch Morata, he was down flopping like a fish. And I don't see that from Kai. I just don't think you see a confident player. Let me say one thing right now. American sports. This is actually a decent analogy. So if you're eye rolling, you're like, oh, what is this American going to say about American sports? I'm ready to do this, but it's a good analogy. In American sports, especially in college football, there's something called redshirting. So it's when somebody comes from high school, so they're a freshman in college now, and they could be really good, but they redshirt the season, which pretty much means they spend the season with the team, they practice, but they really don't play in games. And sometimes it's official, like you're not even going to play this season. And then usually by their sophomore season, year 2, they are totally ready. They know the team. They obviously have watched the games. They've been in training. They've been in practice, and they explode. And it happens unofficially in the NFL. You see a lot now. A rookie is drafted, and he just wants to get acclimated. The coaching staff wants him to get acclimated and practice and everything. But then year 2, they explode. I honestly think that Kai shouldn't be redshirting, of course. We need him as much as possible. But from how we speak about Kai, we should almost treat it like a redshirt season where he's so young, obviously, but the style of play is different. Of course, he came over and then was immediately thrown into starting 11s. It was a really abnormal year and still is. And I obviously just think that you're not really going to fully see Kai Havertz be Kai Havertz until he feels like he has more ownership here at the club. That doesn't mean he has to be the dictator, but just until he's been through a bunch of different moments, good moments, bad moments, and somewhere in between. So honestly, I think people need to just have a little bit more broader perspective on Kai because he has pace, he has physicality, he has skills. So yeah, I couldn't disagree more.
And to add to that as well, finally, we're not saying he doesn't have any weaknesses. I definitely think Kai could shield the ball better. I think he could definitely, work on the fact that when he's receiving the ball to change the tempo and understand that you are going to be pressed much quicker in this league, especially under tight situations. He does have a few turnovers. But again, this is a player that's 21 years old, has just come over. And like I said, there's so much about his game that you can look forward to. For me to be saying that he's a flop already is just taking it too far. Keep your questions coming in, people, because in this preview, I definitely want to get to your questions a lot more because I haven't been able to get to them so much in the last few streams. Can't understand why we are so hyped about Tuchel. Someone please explain. I think our fan base is blinded because we are desperate for trophies. And before I take on that, the response from another super chat from Felix. So it's just a fantastic combat here. I think he may have even submitted that in just to get his point out there immediately. So that's why I'm going to follow it up. Best win percentage at Bayer Leverkusen, at Borussia Dortmund and PSG. Would have won Champions League if Neymar and Mbappe could finish. Tactically flexible. Pep, Klopp, prodigy, prioritizes youth. Excited CFC fan. That is, for me, you have just completely done my work for me in terms of combating it. We talk about the last 3 managers that we've had: Conte, Sarri, Frank Lampard. And if we was to take the best things from all of those 3, from Conte, you take the pragmatism and also the fact that he was very much a little bit of a passion merchant, but that's a good thing. Got the fans on side. The fans loved him. He's very, very vocal on the touchline, very passionate. And the players love that as well. And I think that is an important part of being part of Chelsea. That clearly goes without saying. With Sarri, I like the way that he tried to play the game. For me, he was a little bit too rigid and he was a little bit too one-track mind in his formation and it wasn't very flexible. That was frustrating at times. But I like the football that he was trying to play, and that's probably closer to what Roman wants from an overall standpoint. Frank Lampard, again, fantastic with the media in the beginning and really most of the time, really just the end that it started to go a little bit south. Fantastic with the media and really in that first season as well, really did manage the squad very well. It was only the second season where, of course, politics gets into play and we have a bloated squad. You have to take that into account. Tuchel could potentially put all of those things together. And again, it's early days. It's the first week, honeymoon period. Like I said, go on your dates, people. Enjoy yourself. But there's a hope and there's an option here, and obviously Frank Lampard playing the youth, massive point there. Tuchel has the potential to take all of those 3 common traits, great traits from the last 3 managers and put them together. We know he uses the youth. He's taken a shine to Hudson-Odoi immediately. Pulisic, Mount, I'm sure Reece James are all going to get their look-ins immediately as well very soon. You look at the likes of the way that he's handled the media in this week, especially with the British bias that there clearly is from the media, from the offset with the questions that they get and the way that he's portrayed on socials. He's responded to that magnificently. And again, there's so much more. I don't know what you think, Alex, but I know it's an 18-month contract. I know people might not be excited because, the project is over and Chelsea are sacking managers again. But again, maybe it's the honeymoon period, but I really like the first week that I've seen from him. And I can definitely see potential in him 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you can only go off of what you've seen so far to an extent, really, because it'd be very unfair to forecast what could happen negatively in the future. And I do agree that he might have a little bit of everything from those three managers in a positive way. And I think actually a huge reason why he has just an 18-month contract is he does have one similarity with one of those managers, Antonio Conte. So when things go poorly, he does have a history of fighting inward. He likes to take on his board. He likes to take on the club. So that's the negative. It's also probably one of the main reasons why I was hesitant to say, yeah, I'll get rid of Frank for Tuchel, just because I didn't want to hire another manager who I felt like wouldn't be here forever and ever and ever. But now that Frank is gone, and obviously I always liked Tuchel the tactician even beforehand, and I definitely think that he's impressing me as a person as well. I just want to go back to the saying, well, do not get a puppy because it might die in 10 plus years. Do not have all that fun in the interim.
What an analogy.
Because down the road, you're going to have to break up. You're going to have to say goodbye to him or her. So in the meantime, I think you have fun. You ride this out. Like you said, enjoy the honeymoon phase, but the honeymoon phase could be extended. It could last for a while. Who knows? Because I do think it's difficult him taking over in the middle of the season. But at the same time, I don't want to say it's a free hit, but because he's picking up such a mess, you could say, well, in ways, as long as this isn't catastrophic, maybe this half a season will really help him, especially next season. So it's very possible with the talent in this squad, and then moving into next season, he'll feel a lot more comfortable. It's very possible that this team could be 10 times better next season and could win titles. And then who knows how long the honeymoon phase could last. I'm not getting ahead of myself, but there's a lot of talent in the squad, a lot of talent. I really do still stand by my original quote of something very special is happening at Chelsea Football Club.
Hey, come on.
We all know I was kind of hinting like, hey, keep refreshing Twitter. You're going to see some fun stuff. But how could I not still believe that when I just look at the talent within the club? Now, I'll admit it's been delayed a little bit, so I'll be a coward and say I was talking about the Chelsea women. But no, I wasn't. Who are incredible, by the way.
You are shameless.
And all
you are shameless. You know that? Shameless.
I'm shameless.
You and Con are shameless.
Club, so I'm not wrong. But anyway, I really do think Tuchel is a good match with this squad. Like, it really is kind of built for him. I was saying on my Thomas Tuchel special with two people who know him way more than I do, they were kind of highlighting how at Paris Saint-Germain, he couldn't really fully beat Thomas Tuchel because Neymar and Mbappe were already really established, and he wasn't going to tell them to do intricate stuff like tracking back, certainly in certain situations. And besides them, I mean, Thiago Silva and a lot more established players, Verratti. So he couldn't fully make it the Thomas Tuchel express. But like you said, some finishing goes differently. Mbappe finishes in the Champions League final. We might not even have the opportunity at Tuchel because he wins the Champions League and maybe he doesn't fall out with PSG. But anyway, couldn't really make them his own. But here at Chelsea, we have players, I'm not going to say that can be Neymar and Mbappe, but honestly, based on potential, they can be in that tier. They really can based on potential, but they're not there yet. So they're ready to be molded. So that's perfect for Thomas Tuchel. So I do think that this could be fun for a while. It really could. And I do definitely still stand by me saying, well, we're definitely going to be positives to just hiring an interim guy because like you pointed out, Matisse, an interim's guy's focus is only on the interim. So that is important. But maybe, honestly, this half a season for Tuchel, like I said, as long as it doesn't go absolutely horribly, maybe it actually helps him kind of extend the honeymoon phase for however long that is. So I think there are a lot of positives to Thomas Tuchel. I really do. The big negative, once again, I'll end my answer with what I started it with, is just the fact that it's not going to be Sir Alex longevity or Arsene Wenger. And I'm not saying that'll ever happen again. But he does seem like a character where he's going to be authentic. He's not ever going to fully change. I'm sure even if he does stay for years and years and years, he will have some hiccups along the road with
100%.
Marina and the board because it's just as much them as it is Thomas Tuchel. So you put that together, we could have fun.
We have fireworks.
That was my big negative. I just want the fairy tale, Matisse. I want that manager staying here for 7 to 10 years and building a dynasty. But because that's really unrealistic right now, I actually think Tuchel's a great appointment.
I'll even take 5 to 7 years. I'm not going to lie. I'll take anything.
Sure.
This when it's Chelsea, you have to drop your expectations just a little bit for the longevity thing. But Klopp, Pep, they've done that kind of time. I think that would be healthy. And we talk about, I mentioned American politics in the same way where they have terms as presidency. And I think sometimes it's healthy to have a change in power every couple of terms. So I'm not looking for a Sir Alex Ferguson type situation, but it would certainly be nice to have some longevity. But it has to make sense on all fronts, of course. I Test Merchant says you expect Little Tuchel to try Zuma and Chris at CDM. I think before I even allow this Little Tuchel thing to even run on this channel,
it's not Tuchel. I need to clear this up because you have
no, you don't.
Okay,
I saw this.
It is not Tuchel like your butt. Okay, it is Lil Tuchel. So Lil Wayne, the rapper. I'm really disappointed with how many people aren't up to date on their hip hop. Lil Wayne's nickname is Lil Tunechi. It's kind of spelled Tunechi, but it's Tunechi. So all you're doing is taking out the end.
It's so bad.
Lil
it's
Tunechi.
So bad. It's
Fantastic.
So bad.
It's fantastic.
We've had Mason Mount Monday. We've had Tuesday Tomori. Little Tuchel. What else have we had?
No, there was no Tuesday Tomori. It was Freaky Friday, based off the movie Freaky Friday. Come on. Absolutely ridiculous.
You're making our fan base very uncool. It's not good.
The next song is actually going to be Lil Tucci featuring Money Mace. So for you hip hop heads out there,
Christ.
who's Money Mace after?
just to answer that final part, I don't think Marquinhos was used as a CDM at PSG because PSG didn't really play the back three, right? So he would play the CDM role and come back into
way less back three than they did at Dortmund.
Yeah, 100%, not even nowhere near, bro. Yeah, not even close. No. So Marquinhos would play holding midfield and then move back into the back three for possession reasons. Same reason you saw Jorginho under Sarri. I know very different players, but he moved into the back three, took up possession. If you have a situation where you have Reece James playing and you have obviously Jorginho and Kova as well, and again you're playing the back three, so you've already got three centre backs. If you're playing that, then you don't put Marquinhos at holding midfield because you've already got three centre backs. He doesn't need to drop in. If we're playing a four, then potentially. So it will be an interesting one. A reason why I bring up Marquinhos is because obviously that's the reason why you brought up Zuma and Chris. I don't ever, and I don't want to be rude here, ever in my life expect a positional play or progressive attacking manager to ever in their life, on God, use Zuma at holding midfield. That would be a catastrophe. I speak about Kante playing holding midfield and the way that I haven't warmed up to it as many as most of the fan base have because of the lack of passing range vertically in between the lines and the lack of speed maybe and also the willingness to get into positions and of course, no offense to Kante, it's not his game to do that. He's not Xabi Alonso, he's not a Pirlo, he's very much a Kante, disturb and destroy and give it off simple to a Matic, a Drinkwater, etc. Or make a run with it, a great run, run. He's got low sense of gravity. He can make those mazy runs. So Zuma is just an absolutely no-go. Christensen is a player that, I think he has a better chance of doing it in the short term because he's done it with Denmark. But there's just too many things about Christensen that I haven't warmed to in a long time. So he was on my sell list.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Zuma at least has experience doing it in England in a game. He did it in the Carabao Cup final under Jose Mourinho. Yeah. Christensen does it for Denmark, but he's never done it in the physical Premier League. I agree, though. I wouldn't do either.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think Christensen as well. For me, who knows, he can turn his career around. But for me, I always look for a different mentality in my centre backs than what Christensen offers.
Both those guys.
Yeah, 100%. That's what. Yeah, I would say Reece James would be a better person to develop than both those guys. I think even Billy Gilmore. Do you see that if you're looking for? I guess dropping in terms of centre backs dropping in, you couldn't do it. But if you don't need the centre back dropping in, I definitely think Billy Gilmore is going to be in that zone for Tuchel a lot. Keep your questions coming in. I think we look at Verratti and that comparison was already made. What do you make of? Or can you give us some inside scoops? Is Gilmore leaving? What's going on with Gilmore? Because it looks like there's been very 50-50 split on if he could leave, if he could stay. I personally would love him to stay for my own selfish reasons, but also it would be great to see him get more game time. We know the politics at the club and the hierarchy in terms of the position. He's not exactly top of the food chain in terms of Kovacic, Jorginho. If you was a if you was a gambling man in Las Vegas, what would you put your chips on?
Yeah, it's actually a really tough one because it's a very fluid situation, it feels like. It kind of reminds me of when the summer window was ending and we heard Ampadu and Lampard talk about Ampadu's future, where 1 minute Ampadu wanted to stay and fight for it. And then like 2 days later, he's going out on loan. And obviously he was a huge reason why that move was made. So, yeah, I don't know, because we can go off public quotes of Tuchel saying, no, we don't need to get rid of anyone. Even so much so, and I'm going to be a hypocrite because I normally say to people, never read into a press conference, especially when futures are being talked about. But if you remember back to the question that was regarding Mount and Billy Gilmore, it was a two-part question asked by a woman, I forget her name, but she did the Mount part and then she did the Gilmore part, and she kind of ended it with going out on loan, Gilmore going out on loan. And before Tuchel could even open his mouth, he shook his head when Gilmore going out on loan was mentioned. He just shook his head. And I don't know, maybe that was a quick thing that he wasn't even thinking about. And because he knows he's not going to go out on loan. But you're right. The whole week we heard he's getting really close to a loan. So I don't have any inside scoop. I woke up about an hour ago. So like I said, fluid situation. Yesterday, it felt like it was really up in the air and maybe he was actually closer to staying. But I will say, Jorginho obviously plays a massive part here, a massive part. The club has tried to sell him, obviously, in the summer window. They have tried in January, but let's be real. They haven't really tried in January because no transfer activity has really been efforted here in January. Outgoings, incomings, it really just hasn't been possible, especially with the manager stuff way up in the air. But Jorginho is a player that I don't think is going to be phased out between now and the end of the season. Some of that could be Tuchel liking him or at least wanting to rely on experience. But another part of that is the fact that Chelsea are not going to have that player just completely rot on the bench. He does have an agent with some pull, with some say. Jorginho has the Euros coming up. He normally is a starting midfielder for the Itzuri. So it's going to be really important for him to keep that spot. And as long as Chelsea, of course, are not completely destroying their chances of getting better results, they are going to side with Jorginho over Gilmore for now. And I think the manager, whether it's Lampard or Thomas Tuchel, understands that. So I think the whole Jorginho-Gilmore thing, now that we're seeing maybe the same thing, I know it's early days under Tuchel, but now we're seeing maybe the same dynamic under Lampard and Tuchel, where Jorginho is still kind of favored. I don't think he's actually favored, like authentically. I think Lampard, we all know, was a bigger Gilmore guy, at least as a player recently, than Jorginho. But Jorginho got the minutes lately because of wider things than just performance on the pitch. And I think it'll be the same way with Tuchel. I think Tuchel already really understands him. If you listen to that answer on Gilmore, he said
very detailed answer. Very detailed.
He said all these phrases that like we know very truly about Billy Gilmore, how he's smart, the one-touch passing and everything. And then the only thing he threw in negatively was, we'll see about his size in this league. So I actually don't think that was really much of an insult or anything negative from Tuchel about Gilmore, but maybe it was a little sneaky admission just so we're not surprised if Gilmore doesn't play a lot between now and the end of the season. But I don't know. If I'm a betting man, you asked me to put my chips down. At this point, I do think he stays probably because Tuchel did end that sentence with, well, we're in all these competitions, so there's no need for anyone to leave. And I don't know. I think the club probably selfishly would want Gilmore to stay because he is great depth. But we talked about this on my pod. Selfishly, if you're Gilmore, it's a tougher decision because you know you're good enough to be playing consistently over someone like Jorginho, but you're also good enough to go out on loan and be a really good player for a halfway decent team. So I don't know. I mean, we're getting really damn close to the end of the window here. So maybe by the time some people are viewing this, we already know what's happening.
Yeah, and we are getting very close to the end. And that if they're not working on a club for him to go to, it becomes a rush job. And what you don't want is for him to go to a team that we just rush it, maybe don't even play possession football, and it becomes a disastrous loan because that's a waste of time. He could learn a lot under Tuchel in the training sessions just by staying there. I think Pep showed that with Phil Foden. Nemo left a really good comment here that I haven't been able to highlight, but I put it up here just for my notes here. Is you need ability to turn with the ball, playing as a holding midfielder. I'm guessing under Tuchel, none of our holding midfielders can do that. Tuchel likes to play from the back. Mourinho, was it Mourinho or Denmark? Don't play from the back. Okay, yeah. So Mourinho for Zuma and Denmark as well. I think I couldn't agree more. And I think it's the same situation that I felt with the striker. Is that the striker? We never had a perfect striker under Lampard. I think Giroud had his limitations. Tammy had his limitations. And Werner definitely had his limitations. And it's the same with holding midfield. Jorginho has his limitations, a mobility standpoint, and the fact that, again, if you're looking for a player that can turn and really then, if you're talking about Verratti level of turning and weaving your way out of tricky situations on your own, that's not Jorginho. Jorginho is very good at scanning, analysing the situation, popping it off with triangle passing and moving the ball out of a system that surrounds him and getting the ball out of danger. But if you ask Jorginho to take on 2 or 3 men and dribble part, it's not going to happen. There's very few players in world football. Verratti is very special breed in that sense. Kovacic, we know, is not a natural even holder. He likes to roam. He's not exactly going to hold position. He's still got to learn that. Kante, we've spoken about as well, and Gilmour's very young. I think Gilmour, though, out of everyone, is closer to that mold of someone that I would look for in that position than any of the seniors, because again, he's got the mobility. He has showed tenaciousness and a tackle in his game. He's shown that he can weave his way out of tough situations with again, the low sense of gravity, but also the way that he can carry the ball. And he's also got the passing range as well. But he's obviously very young, and to play him every single game would be ludicrous. So we don't have the perfect solution, but long term, Gilmour for me suits the position more than most if he fulfills his potential. And by the way, for the people that don't rate Gilmour, if you're looking for a manager who's now going to propel Gilmour, I think Tuchel's that guy. I think Tuchel's really going to develop Gilmour into a player. So I have even, if I had massive hopes for Gilmour anyway, now my hopes are even higher. This super chat here says Kai has a deceptive strength. He made is that Kunusa? I don't even know who that is, but thank you. I've just learned the new name. Look, we embodied him against Villa. Against Villa. Yes, I know him now. Who is actually a quality strong centre back. Give him time, he'll be amazing. I completely agree. And like I said, we touched on Kai earlier on as well. What formation would you go with this game, Alex? I know it's early days and we don't really know how Tuchel's going to set up from game to game, but just in terms of a low block, we have a lot of low block games coming up in terms of Tottenham. We saw Mourinho in the second half park the bus at Stamford Bridge. We have Sheffield United, who again beat Manchester United in midweek. We've just seen Newcastle final score beat Everton at Goodison. So there's shock results happening. I think we've got Newcastle as well to add to that as well. Another low block team. Do you think he's going to stick with the same formation? Because again, Wolves was a low block, or do you think he's going to change it up?
Yeah, I mean, we all could be wrong on this one, but no, I do think he'll stick with it, to be honest, because like you said, there's a nice little run of games where we can play a similar style, or we'll face a similar style, I should more say, like you've said. Yeah. So that was his approach against Wolves. And remember, it wasn't like he had thought of that approach in less than 24 hours. He did have an idea for a couple weeks that he'd be taking over Chelsea. There was an inevitability about Lampard being sacked. So if you're a smart man, and Tuchel does seem like a smart man, he was probably thinking, hey, I could be coaching the Wolves game. So how may I set up against a team like Wolves? So I do think there was a little more background to setting up like that than just him getting there for the night session and then boom, that's what he went with. So knowing that and knowing that Wolves definitely sit back, I definitely would not be surprised to see the 3-4-3 against Burnley. And maybe for a simple reason, Matisse, saying, well, I think we all can agree the performance wasn't bad from Chelsea Wednesday night. Just the one thing missing was getting those truly good chances. But it wasn't dead football or anything. We were just missing the incisiveness a little bit at the very end of our moves and possession. So I think Tuchel's going to look at that performance and then see maybe 2 similar opponent approaches and be like, you know what? We got to build off of that. So I definitely expect a different 11. I don't know how different, but I do expect some personnel changes. But I would expect probably the same formation. And like you said, because there are some teams in the schedule here who are not going to all play exactly the same. But if they are teams who more or less are going to let Chelsea possess the ball and sit back, then I think a 3-4-3 is probably likely. Because I'll once again say this. At PSG, he wasn't going to put Neymar and Mbappe in that 3-4-3 all the time. And I'm not saying he is even a manager, even back in the Germany days where there was one formation attached to him. No, definitely not. I mean, even Conte, who, by the way, is not a manager, even though the stereotype is that he's a 3-5-2 manager. If you do look at Conte's history, he also has had plenty of different formations at his disposal. But I would say even Conte is more attached to, say, a 3-5-2 or at least the back three than Tuchel is to anything else. But look at the days where they really played some fun football in Germany. And I know it's a different league and a different style, so I'm not saying you can replicate everything. But look at the Dortmund team, who I would just say personnel-wise in terms of young, exciting, attacking players, and then midfielders who are kind of CMs, if you will. They had Castro, I remember, and Julian Weigl, and midfielders like that. I think we kind of fit a little bit in the 3-4-3, similar to how Dortmund did. And I was saying this to you offline, Matisse. We were on a phone call last night, and I've kind of already alluded to this a little bit earlier in this stream, but say it is the 3-4-3 and maybe Callum, right, is at right mid. So we were calling right wing back. And then maybe Ziyech or Kai is like the right forward or right winger in front of him. Well, we saw Chilwell there parallel Callum the other night. So Chilwell was the more defensive, obviously, but he was technically the left mid. But what I also really like about it is Chilwell's got to be careful, technically, because if he's not performing really well, what about if Callum or Pulisic becomes the left mid, and now maybe the right mid is more of the defensive player, say maybe a Reece James. So I like the fluidity of what this formation can provide. And I would say right now, a lot of players we feel that are deserving to play are attackers. And so this formation does give you an extra attacker. And even someone like Mason Mount, ideally Mount's going to be in that too with someone in this formation. But I will say Mount can play that LF and RF quite well. I just want to say
he had a few games good there against Tottenham away, I remember.
Absolutely. So those are more tucked in positions. And under Tuchel, I'm really excited to see also what Mount can do. So I just think so many players that we rate, Pulisic, Ziyech, Kai, Timo, Tammy, Reece, Chilwell, Callum, if I didn't say him, they all kind of are unique and fun fits in this formation. It's not perfect. We're not perfectly tailored for this formation, my opinion. To be perfectly tailored for this formation, we'd have Declan Rice or someone like him to be in that midfield too. But yeah, I actually do think we'll see the 3-4-3, and that's actually adding to my excitement. I think it can be fun, despite how Burnley play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And someone brought up, before we get to this Gallagher point, because I'm going to tie the Gallagher with the Loanees and potentially who fits in and who has a chance under this new regime and who doesn't. But before I get onto that, there was another point made that was really important, which was Kante 6-6. And I was so happy. You know my thoughts on Kante loan defensive midfield. Maybe, my opinion got shut out a little bit when we was in good form. But then, Lord and behold, the status quo returns in the last couple of months, and I can sing again. Do you know what I mean? It goes like that sometimes. You got to ride the rough with the smooth. But the 6-6 thing was so pivotal for me, because that for me has always and will continue to forever be his best position, and that's when you get the best out of N'Golo Kante. When you put him in double pivot, 6-6, whatever you want to call it. What we saw against Wolves, where we saw Jorginho and Kova together in that counter press, very organized. But Kante as well could very easily and very much so fit into that perfectly. So I'm really happy to hear him say that he prefers, and it's not a surprise that the two last managers to really again to be very heavy on positional play potentially and progressive football are saying that Kante cannot play in that. Not saying that he can't. He said that he can, but I highly doubt he's going to want him to use there for the reasons that we suggested. Very unlikely you're going to see Kante in that lone defensive midfield 6 role, because again, just like Kurt Zouma, by the way, a way more extreme as you will not see. I will bet you money you will not see Kurt Zouma in that role that was mentioned earlier, in that lone 6. It just will not happen. Christensen, Gilmore, Kante, Jorginho, Kova will all be ahead of him, and so that will, even Reece James, in my opinion, should be. So you will not see that, but Kante, for me, in that 6-6, that's where you get the best out of him. That's where you allow him. Again, I have always said it. You do not have a lovely, playful, young, energetic kid, and then you put them in a cage. It doesn't make any sense. You let them be adventurous. You let them wander. You let them do all these things. That's how I see Kante. Very innocent, but very adventurous. Very, can contribute to many facets of the game. In that counter press, winning the ball high up the pitch, and then having the opportunity to attack, and not having to break down a defense every 5 minutes or every game. We actually have the opportunity to open up a defense differently by doing that. Maybe, pressing them higher up the pitch and again, using that counter press. And there's no one better at winning the ball interception wise and counter press and all that kind of stuff than Kante. So that's another way to break down a defense without the ball. So I'm looking forward to that. But to get onto the loanees, we'll start with Gallagher. How do you feel about him future-wise? It's going to be an interesting, because obviously I think with all the guys out on loan, we're going to touch on, Ampadu and a few others as well. It's a completely different shift, isn't it? Because now you've got and let's be honest, Tuchel may not know about these guys as much as, or he definitely won't know about these guys as much as Jody Morris did, as much as Frank Lampard did. What future do you see for Gallagher? Are you worried, or because we've seen a lot of Chelsea fans get worried about youngsters in the last week?
Sure. So on Gallagher, I would say even before Frank was sacked, it was starting to go downhill because Sam Allardyce was weirdly appointed at West Brom. And what a horrible appointment, may I just say. I mean,
so true.
Absolutely no need to sack Bilic, really, because they were not doing well either, but they were actually having some spirited performances from time to time. Like, they actually played some spirited football. Allardyce is playing just dreadful, atrocious football. The results are awful. And clearly, Conor Gallagher, I wouldn't say suffering from that, but he's not obviously playing the exact brand of football that he was. And Bilic at least went with Gallagher, where there was intensity to the football. And Gallagher is an intense player. So that kind of segues me into my answer. So obviously, Frank leaving, Jody leaving, that's going to hurt Conor Gallagher, right? So that's more factual. Just like you said, Tuchel's going to know a little bit less about him, probably a lot less about him than those two. So technically, yes, his chances have lowered. But I will say, and we got to just not pay attention to formations for Tuchel because they do change a lot. So I wouldn't say just because Frank's not here and we're not playing the 4-3-3 anymore, at least not right now, that now all of a sudden Gallagher doesn't fit in our formation, because Tuchel will change up his formation a lot. And more importantly, I really think Tuchel, if he can have some time with Conor Gallagher, would love Conor Gallagher. I was saying earlier in this answer why I'm a bit higher on Tuchel, the person, kind of the man manager, is I've been privy to some really intimate examples these last few days of how he speaks to players and what really gets him going in training, what really makes Tuchel excited. And it's intensity, it's grit, it's going 110%, it's going through a wall. And that's really true about Tuchel. Obviously, that's been told to me, and I'm sure many others from people who saw him in Paris or in Germany. But now I'm kind of getting firsthand stories of that even in the last few days. And I know that if he is given the opportunity to coach Conor Gallagher, he's going to be like, wow, I love what this kid's about. I love what this kid's about. So I would say the number one thing Conor Gallagher has always had going for him, he's a talented player. He's got great technical ability, but he's a dog. And I mean that in the best way, not like he dogs it. He does the opposite. He is just a player that gets after it. And he's smart. And he actually probably does have the positional versatility where Tuchel could look at him and see fits for him in multiple formations. So I wouldn't say all is lost for Conor Gallagher just because of the player he is. But I would say the two negatives are Frank is gone. And right now it seems like Gallagher is going to be stuck at West Brom for the second half of the season, playing some of the most depressing football I've ever seen. So two negatives, Lampard's gone and Gallagher's being managed by Allardyce right now. But one positive, he is kind of the exact player and player professional that Tuchel apparently loves. So it's not all dead.
Yeah. Obviously, if I was to go through all the loanees, we could be here all day. So I'm not going to go through all of them. Only really two other ones that I think, for me, stand out big time. So I'll leave out Loftus-Cheek and I'll leave out Barkley. Obviously, they're more senior. And it really is down to them in terms of their form with how much they play themselves back into it. But, for me, they're more experienced and they have a shorter lifespan in terms of time, because they really do need to be having great seasons because of the age that they're at now. I think they're, both of them will be approaching near their prime, both for different reasons, obviously the injuries as well, but they've definitely got work to do. But I want to touch on Ampadu, because you know how high on Ampadu I am. He's starting to improve his performances at Sheffield United. He wasn't great, having some some poor performances, but I always felt like he was scapegoated by that fan base in terms of just blaming it on him as to why they were bottom of the table. He's a young kid. There's definitely more reasons in their play as to why they were bottom, but we've seen his quality come through in recent weeks. They've managed to pick up some big results, and he's been playing in the back three and he's been playing well. And you said this to me as well, is that I don't mind where Ampadu plays. I see him as a very versatile player, as do really probably Chelsea. He's played DM, he's played in the back three. I don't mind where he plays as long as he gets an opportunity for me, because I think fundamentally he has the quality to do so. But we speak about maybe his top performances at Leipzig and then at Sheffield United as well. They've come in a back three, right? And all across the back three, whether that be in the middle, that right side, or the left side, he's been comfortable really in all three when he's been at his best. And then you look at the way Tuchel plays with this team on against Wolves, and when we talk about Marquinhos at PSG, when they play the back four as someone that could drop into the middle of a back three as well from holding midfield. And I think the future for Ampadu just looks brighter and brighter, because you've got the character, you've got the leadership qualities as well from a young age, and the responsibility that he takes on. Not as much as maybe Gilmour in possession, but similar along those lines in some respects when he's confident. But he's got the confidence to play in that back three, in the middle, right, left, like I said, and he's very good on the ball, very good passing range. You know, he's defensively aware when he's at his best. You know, he can go up for his duels. He's not the tallest guy, but that's, again, when you got a back three, we've seen it with Aspie at Conte. You can have a smaller guy in there. So I'm really confident and I'm happy about his situation if he can have a good end of the season, potentially keep them up, and then pre-season he gets a look in potentially. How do you feel about Ampadu?
Yeah, you said it well. So I won't add much. I would just say that this was an appointment that definitely made Ampadu a winner. When you talk about a new manager coming in, who are some premature winners and losers, Ampadu, at least right now, would be a winner because of what you just said. If the back three is going to be at all used more than it was under Lampard, which you would assume it would be, that favors Ampadu, because the positions he's ready for in order go like this to me. He's most ready to be a center back in a back three. Like you said, pretty much his best professional performances for the most part have come anywhere in a back three as a center back. Then I would say the midfield. And yeah, it would be DM. But I would once again say, this is another reason why I hate the Sheffield United loan, because when he plays as a midfielder, he's not even playing as like a real DM, like a holding DM. Sometimes he's actually positionally a bit forward from the two guys on his side. So it's really bizarre. But I would say, yeah, center back in a back three, he's most ready for. Then midfield. And then just because of his lack of height and size, I would say a center back in a back four. But yeah, what I rate him the most at right now is a center back in a back three. So Tuchel will play that, you would imagine, at least a little bit, maybe a lot, honestly, maybe a lot. So the only other appointment that could have been better for Ampadu would just be Nagelsmann. And just by a little bit, because Nagelsmann knows Ampadu. I know he didn't play Ampadu a lot at Leipzig, but we know Nagelsmann likes that back three and knows Ampadu. So, yeah, I still think Tuchel, though, is somebody that will appreciate Ampadu, probably appreciate his intelligence, his versatility, and the fact that he really does give all of his effort possible. So, yeah, I think he definitely is a premature. I got to say premature, but he's a premature winner for this. Yeah.
Yeah. Is he good in the back two? I mean, I would worry in the back two, mainly because I haven't seen it. And, you know,
let me give a good example, just if you don't mind. So
go for it.
Ampadu doesn't really work right now in the back two because he's short and he's not too muscular. So I was complimenting him at the end of the summer, saying it looks like he's putting on some muscle to his frame. Maybe it could work out. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's 5'11" or 6 feet. I don't think he's any taller than 6 feet. And that's okay. But Thiago Silva is 6 feet and he's a real physical specimen. I know he's not like absolutely enormously jacked or anything, but Thiago Silva is about as good of an athlete, just pound for pound, as you can possibly have. And he's so intelligent. And I'm not saying Ampadu is. He's actually quite intelligent for his age. But Silva at this point just knows every department that maybe he doesn't have it athletically, and then can overcompensate for it. And he really is still more impressive athlete pound for pound than Ampadu is. And also someone like Mark Guehi, who's about the same height as Thiago Silva, is an absolute animal. I mean, he looks like a bodybuilder, but he's quick, and obviously he's not at all too blocky. He's very fluid with his movement. So at least with those guys, if you're going to have a short center back, you have other physical things that are really lifting them up, and some are really, really superior and extra impressive. So with Ampadu, I think you would have to just consistently have a perfect game mentally, which he probably is capable of a lot. But sooner or later, it's the Premier League. You know, even a crappy striker, at least rated on FIFA, could be really big and brute and annoying to play against. And maybe that would be the guy that would give Ampadu trouble. Maybe Ampadu could do well when he faces some pacey strikers and even some wingers who cut inside in a back two playing center back. But I honestly just think to be a consistent center back week in, week out in the Premier League, Ampadu's going to have just a bit more physicality on his side. He's not going to really grow anymore unless he grows that hair again and adds a couple inches, but that won't really do anything. So he really would have to put on some impressive muscles. So I'm not ruling that out at some point, or at least periodically down the line, but there's a huge difference between a center back in a back three and a center back in a back four.
Yeah, and you segued beautifully onto the chat have really just reminded me how many young centre backs we have on our books, because they brought up great Gahey, who I was going to segue to anyway, but at Swansea, who's having an amazing time. And again, you talk about not being, not being the tallest player, but physically, Mark Gahey, in comparison to Ampadu, is chalk and cheese. It's not even close. And then you've got Tomori as well, who wasn't looking, we spoke about many times on the byline, wasn't looking like a player that was very high up in terms of making it under Frank Lampard. Now, potentially, he's got a new lease of life. I know the difference is with him is that he's got an option to buy at AC Milan, isn't it? And I think if they want to push that, then they can, and then it leaves us in a weaker spot. But I think Lampard leaving definitely ups the chances of Tomori potentially coming back and actually wanting to come back and potentially be in the mix. And then you've also got Malong Sarr, and I won't lie, I don't follow Portuguese football very closely, so I have no idea what's happening with him. But please wax lyricals about Gahey, because I am so excited to see him in pre-season as well. And I think, again, Tuchel playing out from the back, left-sided centre-back in this back three. I'd even be confident in the back two. I think he, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think maybe not next season, but they're looking at giving Thiago Silva a new contract. I think he's very much a perfect player to maybe replace Thiago Silva if we get it right in terms of the way that we, get his, development going. If he needs another loan, obviously, leadership skills and all these things are important as well. But I think just in terms of fundamentally, he looks like a player that could, not quality-wise, it's going to take a long time to get to Thiago Silva's level, but just from a skill set perspective, he looks like a player that can play that role, even if it's a squad player for a few years before he elevates.
Yeah, totally. And I would say on Tomori, some of it was Lampard driven. Not that he hated Tomori or anything like that, but obviously he had some stay in putting him out on loan. But I also will say that the club definitely has say. And one of the reasons they were at all willing to put an option to buy for Fikayo Tomori was Mark Gahey. I was receiving word of that for months. Every time I was told about Tomori's future, Gahey was attached to it. So that just speaks volumes about Mark Gahey. So that also makes me still optimistic that even though Lampard's gone, Jody Morris is gone, Jody will know Mark Gahey very, very well. Okay, all is not lost for Mark Gahey. He really is just such a good prospect for Chelsea Football Club right now. It's more for Chelsea Football Club. It's not manager specific. Now, obviously, if the manager does really well and has some say, that can affect youngsters who are not yet in the first team. But right now, things are still moving forward with Mark Gahey. I agree. He definitely could be a center back in a back three, because that's what he's doing for Swansea right now, as usually a left center back, and he's doing it just brilliantly. He's right-footed, but you wouldn't be able to tell a difference. I mean, he can pass with his left so impressively, long, short, one touch. It's just fantastic what he can do with the ball at his feet. But because he is an absolute brick house. I mean, he's a physical specimen. I definitely think he can be a center back in a back four. But also, Mark Gahey is ever improving in the air. I think just because he is 6 feet and has been short, he probably has needed to improve in that area the most of all the areas for a center back. But, I mean, he's had games this season where he won 11 out of 13 aerial duels. And he obviously can jump, so that helps. But I think the big reason why I would want him around Thiago Silva as soon as possible, even if he was an understudy and kind of a third string and mixes in when Silva isn't playing, is Thiago Silva is probably the best center back I've really ever seen at reading the ball in the air. So reading its flight path. We know that he's not tall, so he needs to jump at the perfect moment. Not saying John Terry didn't, but John Terry obviously had size to him, a lot more size. So he could just do it all in that regard. Silva is so good at seeing where the ball is going to actually start spiraling down, and he knows when to jump. And Mark Gahey, I think on his own, is just such an intelligent player. I mean, I know he is. I've heard so many glowing things about what's up here for Mark Gahey. But if he can also see that firsthand from Silva, like, oh man, look at his instincts, look at his awareness of where the ball is, where the flight path of the ball is, then man, he really could just be perfect across the board in terms of the attributes he would have as a center back. So huge future for Mark Gahey. I definitely think that he needs to at least get in preseason, because I want Tuchel to see him firsthand. I want Tuchel to see the specimen he is. I want Tuchel to see the really impressive mind that he is. And then if he does, even if he was sent on another loan, maybe a Premier League loan, and who knows, it could be with Swansea. He's pretty much helping Swansea at the moment get promoted. But I just would feel really confident then, even if he went on another loan, because I know he'll kill it, but I'll also know, Tuchel really liked him in preseason, but maybe he couldn't promise enough game time for him to stick around. So one more loan, I'd be totally fine with that, really optimistic. But I'm on record saying if the new manager wants an Upamecano, fine. I'm not really going to fight him on it, because that's still a good young player. But me personally, the 3 center backs I know I'd want with the team next season, Thiago Silva, and I've been saying Kurt Zouma. That was under the Frank Lampard regime. Unless Zouma just totally goes the other way, never plays again, and when he plays looks horrible, I'm still going to stick by saying Zouma, because he's still at a really good age. Obviously, he's really good in terms of his aerial ability, and he's at least serviceable in other departments. So I would say Silva, Zouma, and Gahey. Rudiger, Christensen, I don't need to speak on. And then Ampadu, it's just a similar thing where what's the best decision for him? But obviously, future-wise, I care most about Ampadu and Gahey, and then players like Umbayamba and Colwill, who are way down the line. So, there you go.
Yeah, and Swansea have the least amount of goals conceded in the league,
The best defense.
14. 14 goals conceded. The next best is 18. And also someone said that they had, I think, 14 clean sheets. I don't know if that was correct, but again, it is part of the best defense, so I wouldn't be surprised. And like you said, he's been playing in a back 3 as well. So he is really, again, he has really shown himself to be a player that would be in the looking. And I agree. I wouldn't mind if he went out on loan. It really is on the preference of the manager, because I don't want him to do what Tomori did, is to stay and then not get any game time. That would be, for me, a complete waste. And if he does get Swansea promoted, then he knows the surroundings there. And as long as they're, for me, going to attempt to play good football, then that would be my only. As long as they're going to continue to try and play good football in the Premier League, and they don't revert to a very negative tactic, then I would 100% have no problem with him going back there. I think he'd be more than cut the cloth. And again, you speak about Tomori. I mean, I keep saying this and exercising this, is that not every player can make it, and especially in this position that we have. We've reeled off 6 names there, potentially, that, even Sarr as well. So many young defenders, and that's excluding the fact that we have 4 senior ones already that we'd have to move on, and that's not easy to do. We understand that. Again, you said on the byline as well, don't as people, don't expect Christensen and Rudiger to move on in one summer. And not that because maybe the club don't want them to move on. I'm sure they probably would want to try and get good money for those 2 players. But don't expect it to happen, because not only is it a difficult market to do, but these players, they're not easy to ship as well. So you have to find buyers in this market. So we have maybe 6 young centre backs that potentially can fight for a spot in pre-season. At +4, that's 10. That's a lot of players. So is this not going to be easy for Chelsea to make these decisions? I just hope that we don't see a repeat of what we saw last summer, which was a Rudiger, Tomori, Everton, West Ham, buy, are we selling, are we loaning, what are we doing? I want there to be more decisive decisions this summer on futures for centre-backs. Give them their pre-season and then make decisive decisions. We don't want, an overload again in the squad. We don't want players broken promises on what, we don't want any of that. So we need to try and avoid that under all costs. I want to finalise really the stream with a nice little game. I'm pretty sure I've covered everything I wanted to cover on the list. There's one little topic that I wanted to address, and it's something that's been irking me. It's maybe an unpopular opinion, and it's really just formalized in the last 24, 48 hours. But I see a lot of the fan base wanting to, and it's been put in maybe in the press conference as well. They want to see Lewis Bate in the FA Cup. They want to see Spoons in the FA Cup. They want to see Tino in the FA Cup.
What did you just call the previous player?
Spoons. And on a phone call, I called him Spoons, Knife and Fork. That's my new nickname. So if you're going to have your weird nicknames, I'm going to have mine as well.
Okay, no, fine. I was just making sure that was on purpose.
Yeah. You're ready, innit? You're ready to...
I'm ready.
Alex is ready to drag me over these names. But you're shaking your head. You're like, how dare you? You come up with your fancy names. Why can't I do it?
Oh, so my names are fancy now. I appreciate it.
I didn't say I like them. They're fancy. I don't like them. They're fancy. Touchy Tuchel, Dammy in the chat. You're Tickle My Tuchel. I don't know, bro.
I never wrote tickle my Tuchel. He obviously photoshopped that, and he didn't even spell tickle right.
It's Sheffield education. I can't. It's not London
the
education.
misspelling
It's Sheffield.
on that birdie platform is absolutely
Sheffield education,
absurd.
bro. You see where Sheffield United is in the league. You see where Sheffield, the town, must be too. Sorry, Dammy, I have to drag you, bro. But like I said with those youngsters, I want to really zone in on this point because what I feel is that the fan base have been caught up. And listen, I love the bridge between the youth and the senior team. I love that. But I feel like the fan base have been over caught up by trying to make this route potentially too easy or potentially too much of a thing that we zone in on every single cup tie. And there's a couple of reasons why I want to say this is because, again, he's 16-year-old Spoons, knife and fork. He does a backheel goal. Fantastic. You know, he gets his professional contract. And then next thing you know, he's the next Highland. And he needs to be in the FA Cup. He needs to start. I've seen people say he needs to start in the FA Cup. 2 points. You need, as a youngster, to have testing times, and you need to really work. And when I mean work, I mean grind. We saw John Terry with quotes saying that it took 2 weeks for youngsters to get into training before they were really respected as footballers in terms of their technical ability, because there's a hierarchy. But then again, I want to push this other point. We have a massive bloated squad, and then you want to introduce more players that, you know, they're not, you know, they're knocking at the door, but they don't need to be introduced now. We can get rid of some of this bloated squad in the summer and then try and introduce them. But for me to try and add more players to an already bloated squad, and then again we talk about senior unrest, we talk about players not getting game time, FA Cup games where we are potentially pushing more players that, you know, young players that don't really need the game time in the first team because we're making that bridge too easy potentially, and then we're unsettling the peripherals of the squad. We're making a bloated squad even more bloated. The squad is big, and there's only so many competitions thanks to us getting knocked out of the Carabao Cup, unfortunately. We need to use the peripherals of that squad in the FA Cup, do we not? Because it's all about management of the squad. And as we've seen in reports, and I don't want to get into it too much, the peripherals of the squad were not happy, as reported in the Athletic. And again, we need to be smart with this. These players are going to be here. And I know everybody wants to see their spoons, knives, and forks against Barnsley, but we need to make sure that this group is together, moving in the same direction for the rest of the season to get top four. And the way to do that is to utilize this bloated squad as it is already in the FA Cup. And I don't think introducing these 16, 17, 18-year-olds ahead of their time is necessary for our current predicament. But Alex, I want to get your thoughts.
My thought is just echoing what you said. Well said. Simple answer. The FA Cup, I hate that I'm saying this because I think he's worth way more than an FA Cup game, but the FA Cup game is kind of a game for Billy Gilmore because you just heard Tuchel the other day say, well, we're in all these competitions, so we don't need to get rid of anyone. He wasn't talking about Tino Livramento or Spoons or Lewis Bate. He was kind of talking about the already first-team fringe players. So Billy Gilmore and maybe Tino Andrin. Love seeing Tino Andrin in all these training photos. It does seem like Tino Andrin is at least the Billy Gilmore of last season, where he really is part of the first team. He just can't be promised game time. But yeah, it's a bloated squad. It's also a new manager who needs to figure out who he likes, when he likes players, and what formation. So I don't think the project is dead. I still think absolutely the youth will get a look in because I know the club is focused on that. Maybe also part of the reason why it's an only 18-month contract for Tuchel, but also it helps having Joe Edwards and Anthony Barry still there. So I don't think the youth project is dead. I definitely think we will see other youngsters at least get their chance. But even under Frank, I would say now's not the time. Unfortunately, we put ourselves in this position where we need to now use all of these games, all of these minutes for pretty much the first team because the first team is that damn big.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Son of Chelsea said it very well. In 54 years, Spoons will be 21. Calm down, give players time to develop. 100%. I love seeing youngsters pushed in, but I also am very wary of the fact that the fan base can crucify them at any given moment if they're rushed in too early and they're not fully developed. And like I said, under normal circumstances, I'd be all for Lewis Bate and all of these players playing in the FA Cup and all that kind of stuff. But when you have a bloated squad, the size of the squad that we have and the issues that we've had with containing this squad and keeping everyone settled, it's nonsensical to then start piling on more players. It's naive, in my opinion, and it's not even smart in any way, shape, or form. Before I get on to the final part of the pod, to the stream, this super chat here. What do you think of the reason for Chilwell's dip in form? I mean, I have absolutely no idea because everybody knew it wasn't my first choice, but I was very impressed with the way that he came into the club, his attitude, his application. You know, we speak about, you know, Ashley Cole rated him very highly. Technically, I wasn't impressed with him last season, and it feels like in the last couple of games he's reverted back to that. I mean, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I would say definitely he's probably been overworked this season. Right from the get-go, played a lot, even when he wasn't 100%. And it just seems like he is one of the names that is just on the team sheet almost no matter what. I know Emerson has gotten his FA Cup games, but actually, Premier League-wise, Emerson has less minutes than Kepa and players like that. So really, it's been all Chilwell. So not cutting him an excuse, but I imagine he is kind of overworked and maybe also mentally overworked because I know it was an in-league acquisition, but still, it's a lot to handle in such a short amount of time. Not too long ago, he was playing over the summer for less.
I think your mic's cutting out, bro.
So yes, so I'm not too worried, but I also would say that better than this.
Your mic.
I don't think anybody said you were getting me cut. So I think it'll be better than this, but I honestly think we won't really see Chile be really, really good again until we figure out some way to rest him a little bit. Which by the way, 3-4-3 theory that maybe sometimes Chilwell gets benched for a more attacking player, and then Reece is on the right, being that defensive right mid. So I like Chilwell, but I think you might get a lot of average performance.
your mic's cut out there a little bit. Do you want to try and come in and come out? Your mic's cut out a little bit there, bro.
Oh, all right, sure. Yeah.
It's cut out a little bit. I'll remove you and then bring you back in. Yeah. His mic's cut out there. You guys in the chat enjoyed that. It was great. It was like it felt like Star Wars. I enjoyed it. But just to really finalize my point while Alex is sorting out his audio, we're gonna get towards the end of the stream anyway. But Sean Dyche, 100%. It's with the theme, people. Do you know what I mean? But again, I feel like, you know, as a fan base, we need to calm down with this promoting the youngsters thing in terms of the FA Cup, because like I said, we've seen the issues that we have with a bloated squad. Tuchel needs to bring a cohesive one direction in terms of the way that he takes this squad forward, and that we need to be realistic within our expectations of how many youngsters we can bleed in, because it's very difficult to have all of these youngsters put into the firing pot, and then again you've got all of these, you know, experienced players on high wages, 100k a week, potentially 150k a week. Some of them, your Jorginhos, your Kovas, they need game time. Whether you rate them or not, they need game time for their own mental, for their own ego, for everything. So like I said, Alex is going to be joining us back in a minute. What we're gonna do when Alex returns is we're gonna basically do a predicted, well, not predicted. We're gonna pick our lineups, which is gonna be fun. What lineup we think Tuchel's going to go with, which is completely unpredictable. We have absolutely no idea what he's going to do because he's the most unpredictable man in the world at the moment. And then we're going to do score predictions as well. So it's going to be interesting. You guys put your lineups in the chat as well. Like I said, we're going to go for maybe five more minutes when Alex returns. Put your lineups in the chat as to who you think, not who you want, because we usually go with who you want. Now it's interesting. Go with who you think Tuchel will play in terms of the game against Burnley, and show me your formation as well somewhere in that, whether it's at the top or the bottom. Just tell me what formation you're using. I think it's going to be very interesting. Usually, you know what I'm like. I don't really want to guess the manager, because usually it's quite predictable, because once you get used to a manager for a few years, Sarri, Lampard, you kind of predict what they're going to do. We have no idea what's going to happen here. No idea. So this is a good opportunity to list your lineups, and let's see what we can come up with. We're going to wait on Alex for a bit, but while we're waiting, if he comes back, if he can't, then we'll end the stream. But I'm going to go with my lineup, I think, and I'm literally just winging this. I have not even thought about it in the slightest. I'm going to go with Mendy in goal. I think we're potentially going to see the same formation, just to keep it simple for myself, because I think it's the same task that we have, which is to break a low block. And I know it was short term against Wolves. He only had one training session, but I'm just going to go with the fact that he may go with that again for another similar type scenario. Maybe Tottenham, you might get something different. So I'm going to go with a back three of Reece James at right side of centre back. I think he should come in. I think I love Aspie, but 100% Reece James is someone that can come into the fold and now, you know, really propel that position to another level, 100%. And then you've got yourself Thiago Silva and Rudiger. Rudiger's going to play for me, not because I want him to, because I just think he will. He's going to be a big part of the plans, whether I rate him highly or not. Then you've got, I think Emerson will get a go at left wing back, to be honest. I think Chilwell's been really poor. It really depends on how much of a start from zero it is under Tuchel, because obviously he can go to a situation where he's not going to he's not going to start from scratch, and he's going to look at previous games. And Chilwell's form has been ropey for a while. And if this was Lampard, I'd be calling for Chilwell to be dropped for a while now. But I think Emerson potentially could get that nod, because technically he might just edge Chilwell in that respect right now. But I have to admit, I'm not convinced by any of our left backs at the moment. Chilwell is massively disappointing me at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. Chilwell, the thing is with Chilwell and Werner, who you've seen me, criticize on this channel a lot in terms of his fundamentals, his first touch, his finishing of big opportunities as well being missed. The thing is with those two players in particular, Tuchel, as a manager, will improve those two players. Tactically, coaching-wise, he's more experienced. So he's going to be able to coach those players better. He's going to be able to improve them. And that's where we have the advantage. Players that we weren't too sure on. I'm not talking about Marcos Alonso's, by the way. For me, he's still dusted. But when it comes to your young players that we've just signed, that we're not too convinced about, and we're like, oh, maybe we've wasted our money. Maybe we need to give up. I would say proceed with caution, because Tuchel could be able to develop these players. We know he's good with young players. We know he's good with coaching young players and developing them and moving them up a gear. He could potentially do that with some of these Chilwells, Timo Werners. And even though I'm not convinced right now of their fundamentals in their game, and then they need to improve quite a few things in their game, technically, I think Tuchel is a manager that can improve them. So that's why I have a little bit more hope now than I did previously. But yeah, so Emerson I'd go with. But again, no one's right or wrong, so don't get onto me, because I feel like anything can happen. I'm just free balling. The double pivot, I don't think Kante's available. So potentially I think you might see. Oh, it's going to be difficult to leave Mount out again, because he did have a really good impact off the bench against Wolves. So it'd be a difficult one to the beginning of your lineup is total nonsense. This is what I'm talking about. What did I just say to you, sir? Have some respect, some grace and decorum for the lineup I just put out. Like I said, you can't tell me my lineup's nonsense when you have no idea what Tuchel's going to do. Don't beef me. We will beef. Alex is back, so he can join. But yeah. And then to continue with my lineup, I would go with Jorginho, because we spoke about the dropping into, the dropping of the midfielder. I don't know. It's a difficult one. Alex, I need help here. You're back now. How's your audio? Let's test it.
I don't know. How is it?
Brilliant. You don't sound like you're from Star Wars anymore. I'm having a real issue with picking my team, and I want you to pick your team with me as well in terms of the midfield. Mason Mount had a really good impact when he came off the bench against Wolves. Really energetic. Do you think he starts, if we're going with a 3-4-3, and obviously I don't know what formation you go with. That's the formation I've just decided to go with, but I have no idea, of course. Do you think Mason Mount gets into the starting lineup against Burnley?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But where does he play though?
I wouldn't be surprised if he played in the midfield too, but I think you only have two options here, either in the midfield too, or maybe as an LF and RF. But I would say the midfield too. Yeah, I don't know who would pair him. Maybe it's Kovacic, because remember, Tuchel has watched the games recently, even before he took over, and Mount and Kovacic did play a bit together as a midfield too. So yeah, it could be that. Totally could be that. Maybe it's too early for Conte to start. So I just think Mount starts. It really is hard to pick exactly where, because it's a new manager. It could be a different formation than a 3-4-3. I just think he starts.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, what formation would you go for this game if you was predicting what Tuchel will do? I know it's impossible. It's just
3-4-3. 3-4-3.
Yeah,
I hate to be so simplistic, but I want to see Callum again in that role and everything. I mean, not that I wouldn't want to see him more forward as well, but 3-4-3. I just want to build off of Wednesday. And I think because, like you said, the opponent's style isn't too different, I would go with that again.
And then so then the wing backs, I would definitely go Callum on the right hand side. I did sneak in Emerson because I've been disappointed in Chilwell's form recently. And then a front three. I mean, I wouldn't play Werner against Burnley. We've seen some of his quotes. I don't know if they're true or false, but I've seen them tweeted from Absolute Chelsea. So I'm gonna count my blessings that that's correct. Is that he feels like he's a 9.5, and Lampard didn't quite use him in the right place. and that he feels he needs space to run into. Well, newsflash, Timo, this is not the Bundesliga, and you will not always have space to run into. You're going to come up against low blocks, and Burnley is a low block. A lot of our coming fixtures.
That space against Burnley.
Yeah. So I think Timo needs a bit of a reality check if he thinks that he's not at fault for some of his own performances. I don't like the fact that Lampard has been
fault, Matisse, for the sitters he missed. I'm just wondering.
100%. I've apportioned blame to Lampard where I feel necessary. One place I don't apportion blame to him is Timo Werner. I think 100% Timo Werner could have been in better zones some of the time in games, but these are parts of games where I feel like, okay, he's a bit too deep here, whatever. But we're talking about fundamentals of a game in terms of first touch and finishing. He's been woeful. Some of the chances he's been missing they've been, against Fulham late in the game, coming on off the bench. You're running in behind 1-on-1 and you miss. That is your own fault. That is your own business. That has nothing to do with Frank Lampard. And I feel like I don't want to allow. I don't think it's going to be a flip of a switch for Timo Werner to get back into form. I've said it countless times. And I feel like if he thinks that he's going to be a 9.5 that runs in behind in the Premier League, he's going to get that in some games, but he's not going to get it in every game. So he's going to have to adapt. He's going to have to acclimatise and he's going to have to develop his own game. So I don't know if I'd start in here. Who would be your front three if you was going with that then?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'd go Tammy up front. And then on the left of him, I would have Pulisic. And then on the right of him, it's real tough because I'm debating between Kai and Hakeem. You know what? Overall, I would start Kai more often, but I think I go Hakeem there. I don't think, though, he's going to bench both Germans. And I do want Kai to build off of Wednesday.
Yeah, I would prefer Timo on the bench.
You know what? Maybe I said Hakeem then. Because I'd actually like to see Kai play a similar position that he did Wednesday, but flip the side. Because he was really on the left side on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
He's left-footed. So I'm not saying he can't be good there at Leverkusen. He literally did play everywhere. But, yeah, give me a front three of Pulisic, Tammy, Hakeem. But then I'm still putting Chilwell at left mid. If you want to put Emerson there, that's fine. And then I'm putting Callum behind Kai now as right mid. Your midfield two, pick your two. I'll go Mount and Kovacic if Conte is definitely not ready. And I still might go Mount and Kova because Kova had a good game, have him build off of that. I'll
that's true.
Mount. So, that's my midfield and attack, so to say.
And to finalise, we got some reactionary comments because Ampadu is not having a great game against Manchester City. Well,
what's the score? I'm totally off the grid here.
I have no idea what the score is. Let us know in the chat. But obviously, 9.5 is a hybrid, so basically not a striker, but not a winger. Second striker.
In behind the striker.
Yeah, really. Second striker, which is somewhere where he could play in that.
Which, by the way, hold on, not to cut you off, but didn't Lampard literally just play him there against? Who did we play on set? Luton? Didn't he just play him in behind the striker?
Yeah, he did.
We even said it wasn't a 10 or a cam, but he was behind the striker.
Yeah. So I think Timo Werner needs to do some soul searching for himself as well. It's not just everybody else's fault. But Anderson, yes, I'm saying Asolidias. And guess what? A goal or a mistake. I'm not watching the game. And regardless, I don't care. You're not going to have me flip-flop on a player after one match. He had a great performance against Liverpool at Anfield, if you guys remember. They lost the game, but he had a very good performance. And today he's not playing very well. This is development. He's young. Ups and downs, bro. You're not going to get me to start hating on Ampadu. And I don't care what kind of game he's having. He's playing the best team in the league, by the way, the top team, and the bottom team. We talk about players like Phil Foden, Saka, Hudson-Odoi. They're in great teams. So, yes, they're going to be surrounded by better players. So, their development may be faster. They're training with higher level players. Ampadu is training with Sheffield United. He's playing for the team at the bottom against the team at the top. Of course, they're not good. And yes, he may have made a mistake, but he's young. And not every youngster is Mbappe level. And with that, I bid you good night. It is the end of the stream. I've had my Ampadu rant. Alex, let them know where they can find you, bro. Thanks for joining me.
No problem. It wouldn't be an Alex Goldberg appearance without some technical issues. So I'm happy I can provide that. I just want to be authentic for you. But find me on Twitter, Alex Goldberg _. Never been able to get rid of that _. Have no idea who has Alex Goldberg, but I'm not happy with them. And just if you want to listen to a podcast that I rate somewhat okay, listen to the Byline on Patreon.
Love that. And 100% listen to the Byline on Patreon because I'm on that for post pods as well. Some serious guests on that every week. It's not a joke. Do you know what I mean? There's some serious guests coming through. The special on Tuchel was serious. I'm talking, you know, some of the world's top journalists. So make sure you go and check that out.
Don't butter me up. Just shush.
The link is in the description to the Patreon, as it is every single upload, guys. So if you're checking out the description, make sure you do. I've got my day one riders in there. Do you know what I mean? I've got Bruce for the artwork. Make sure you check him out. I've just got him some great stuff with a certain footballer. You're going to see a very cool intro with Bruce, who did the intro for me in the channel art. You're going to see a very, very cool... I'll let you know offline, Alex. I can't spew this. But you're going to see a very cool intro that Bruce has done for a certain footballer's channel that I managed to hook him up with. Little old me, do you know what I mean? Just doing my thing. But yeah, I'm so happy for Bruce because I can't thank him enough for the channel and the way that he's been able to transform my shows, my weekly shows, in terms of the intros. And it's just been a blessing, man. So Bruce, his link is in the description. Every single video, the Patreon to the Byline, every single video. So make sure you check that out, and a few other links as well. And also check out the show that I did yesterday with Zach and Sam. It might have missed you. You might not have seen it because it was a later time and I didn't really give you any warning. But that was with the Football Daily presenters. You know, Zach does the stuff with Chelsea, and so does Sam as well. They do the interviews with Chelsea. They do the show with Savage Dan as well. Zach does, so you'll know him from the club. And brilliant show, so funny, great guys. Alex has had Zach on the Byline as well. Really top dudes. So yes, I will see you guys tomorrow for the review. That's going to be with Anita from Football Terrace. I'm sure you'll know her as well. She's on Sky Sports some of the time. And yeah, man, we're keeping you. It's unpredictable. You don't know what's coming next on this channel, so don't try and predict it. I'll leave you guys with that, and I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully it's after a win. In a bit, people.